Awesome. All right, so we'll just start. I know that we are super excited to be here. For those of you maybe who didn't get the flyer, I am Bethany Voice. I'm with the Huffacre Group. We're an expansion team based out of Nashville. And we wanted to come and bring you guys a great class today with my director of sales, Phil Kingsley. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute. But just some of the things, I know it seems like a lot of you may watch on Facebook, and you may even watch this back later. So I want to make sure you have our contact info so you can reach out to us for questions or resources. I think we're very, very passionate about helping the agent, right? We're all KW agents here together. Another unique opportunity is we are an expansion team, and we're looking for constant growth opportunities. Talk to some team leaders in your area. And we're excited to be looking at a Florida market for our team. We've got tons of resources. Some of you may already know someone you're trying to put into your downline and bring into your KW office, and we'd love to talk to them if that's a resource we can offer. Or if you have more questions about what we can bring, we have 7 locations, and just have always been super passionate about creating a platform for agents to be successful, to give them the tools and the systems and the models and the coaching and training. It's really going to take their business to the next level, kind of break through those ceilings of achievement. And I think that's what we've created here at the Huffacre Group, which made us the #1 expansion team in the Southeast in 2019. And we're super excited about the continued growth that we're looking forward to, and super excited about coming to Florida. So my contact info is Bethany@thehuffacregroup.com, and I'll make sure that you guys all get that, and we drop it into the chat box, and we drop it into the Facebook Live comments. And you can reach out to me directly if you hear Phil talk about something that you want to know more about, or questions about how maybe we do something here. We did a little over, what was it last year, Phil? Right around 400 units last year. So right at around 125 million in volume, I believe. So there it is. So just some exciting stuff, and we'd love to help you, whether that's in your own business or with us. So just let me know, and if you hear something that you want to know more, or maybe some material, Phil, you're the teacher, so you probably have got some stuff you want to share. You're going to share your screen, but I'm happy to send that out and answer any questions or connect you with Phil for his all-star coaching abilities. So I'm going to send it over to you. Tell them about yourself and what you're going to be teaching today.
All right. So this is what I want to do. And initially I thought this was going to be a Zoom meeting where folks were logging in. So this is what I want to start with. I want to start with the question to you who are watching, if anybody's watching. And exactly what I want to know is, what would you like to achieve at the end of this class? What do you want to know? What kind of applications would you like to implement into your company? Just so that I know I'm going through the right material. Now, I'm going to go through the material regardless. I just want to make sure that I'm proposing in a way that's going to be beneficial to your company. Now,
hey, real quick, Phil, just so you know, we've set this up so they can see you and I, but we do have a couple people on the Zoom link. So I'm going to manage the chat box. So I'll just kind of pop in and let you know what they're saying, so you know how to best serve them. Okay.
Perfect. So through the chat box function, guys, either on Facebook Live or on the Zoom link, let me know exactly what you would like to accomplish through this class. Bethany will take a look at those while I tell you who I am. It's a real short story. Sound good? So in the chat boxes, let me know what you would like to see accomplished through the class. And now I will go into who I am. I'm Phil Kingsley. I work with the Huffacre Group. My role is the director of sales. And I think, a chronology would probably be appropriate. Well, let's start with the beginning. So I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Chicago boy. I went to college in Central Illinois, and I graduated with a middle school math and science education degree. I taught 8th grade math and science in Central Illinois for 2 years, and I've coached gymnastics kind of for my whole adult life. Gymnastics brought me to Knoxville, and then that same gymnastics opportunity brought me to where I am today, which is in Middle Tennessee. Now, at some point along the line, one of my gymnastics coach friends had got their real estate license and called me up and said, "Hey man, I just sold a house and I made $7,000. I was like, "That's awesome. I'm doing that." So in 2007, I got my license. That was an amazing time when the market did one of those. But regardless, David and I joined together and created the team. I started off as his buyer's agent, had the opportunity to grow into being a lead buyer's agent. And then David and I said what other opportunities would exist, and director of sales was something that I felt like I was interested in. So as the director of sales for the Huffaker Group, essentially what I am is the I guess MAPS coach, if you're familiar with Keller Williams, or just the coach for all of our agents. There's a lot of leadership responsibilities that go along with that. However, the economic model is where I live, which is shocking. I know I probably don't look like a numbers guy. However, I do love numbers. I love data, and I use the economic model every day when I coach my agents to make sure I know what they need to be doing in order for them to achieve their goals. Now, we do it on a lot of different levels within our team. We use the economic model company-wide to ensure the company is going to hit its goal. We use the economic model per expansion office to ensure the expansion agents are going to hit their goal. And then, of course, we use it individually to ensure the agents individually are going to hit their goals. So we use a lot of different formats in order to ensure the agents are converting at the level they're supposed to in order for them to hit their goals. And just like any other company, we don't set the goals for the agents, they set them for themselves. And then we are behind the scenes as accountability structure systems models to ensure they hit their goals within our organization. So that is a little bit about who I am, where I'm from, and how we all got here today. So anything yet, Bethany, either on Facebook Live or?
I haven't got anything, and I know I kind of just put it out, right? Like how to use an economic model. And I know we're coming from that mega team view, and yet you've always coached people to their individual business. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that this works, right? Whether you have a team of 25 or if you've got a team of you, this is how we use the numbers to work for you to make a very predictable business. And I know you've always been super passionate about that. You've taught me a ton about that. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to hope to accomplish today, of how are they going to use it in their own businesses.
Yeah, and I think, if we take you, Bethany, your role as the director of talent acquisition or our full-time recruiter, the economic model exists in your business, right? We know how many appointments we need to set in order for you to bring an agent on board, right? We know how many dials it takes for you to set an appointment. So, we take that data and just plug it into your goals, right? So I do coach agents outside of our organization. So I do coach individual agents, and their economic models are extremely different than the ones within our organization. The point is what is it going to take for you to hit your goal? And I would say it kind of begins with make sure that we have a goal established, right? Now, this conversation is probably going to drop back and forth between tracking, goal setting, and then planning through the economic model is what I would say. So my biggest intention for this is to ensure that not only does everybody understand the economic model, but how do you implement it and use it as a resource within your organization, right? If someone comes into your world and they say, I would like to do this, how do you back into that number for them and say, well, this is what I would believe it would take for you to do that. And then is the juice worth the squeeze? Are you willing to do the work to get out of it what you want to get out of it, right? So that's my goal. And if no one else is on there bringing in any questions, that's okay. But I am going to go ahead and get started. Sound good?
Yeah, awesome.
And
I'll just chime in if I see somebody chat something up or they add something. I know we've got someone monitoring the Facebook Live comments as well. Cool. They're going to send them over to me. So I will just let you know when I got something for you.
I like it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to begin with what the economic model is, right? Hang on one second. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. All right. So let's begin here. This is essentially what Keller Williams has established as the economic model. Now, I just copied and pasted this from online, right? I want to make sure that we begin with the Keller Williams model in mind. This is where I began. And then, of course, I felt like there was some need for some extra information or different ways to use it in order to benefit our agents. And essentially, I used it to benefit myself when I was an agent. So this is basically what it is. We're going to go ahead and split our business between listings and buyers. And we're going to determine what is it going to take for us to hit a certain goal. And we're going to go through all of these conversions in order to do it, right? So if we look at this real quick, you can see if we're looking to, get 1.2 million from sellers in volume, same in buyers. Down here, once we break it down to 3% commission, you can see what that's going to be. Or in order to get 1.2 million from sellers and buyers, we'll have to sell 40 million in volume, right? You take your average sales price to get how many units you're going to have to close in order to do that. Then, of course, most importantly is the planning piece of it. It would be great if we had 100% conversion rate from contracts written to contracts closed. All of us who have been in the business long enough know that is not the case. So we want to make sure that we are tracking properly so we can establish what your conversion rates are. And I kind of work this a little bit backwards, but we'll go through this and then we'll go through how the conversion rates help us and then how do we implement them into our company. But this model, for instance, says 160 sellers sold. Our conversion rate from listings taken to sold is 65%. So in order to close 160 listings, we're gonna have to take 246 listing agreements, okay? And I will go through the way I use the terminology through the economic model, and then you're free to, of course, use your own language within your own company, all right? Now, this is telling me that I have an 80% conversion rate from seller listing appointments set to listings taken. So in order to hit this goal in volume in the year, I'll have to set 308 seller listing appointments. Okay, now that's a big goal, and that's a big company, right? Now, if that is the economic model, how do we apply it to your company? And I think that's really what we're driving through this conversation, right? So if we start with what I believe is the beginning in mind, and guys, I'm sorry, I don't do PowerPoints or anything like that, but I really did I wanted to go through the conversion rates themselves, all right? If we are looking at what I use as a basic economic model, and there's a lot of different versions that we use, but this is the basic economic model. Here are conversion rates. So CC for us is contracts closed. CW is contracts written. AG is agreements gained. AH is appointments held. AS is appointments set. Contacts dials. Now, these numbers here are the ones that we are looking to focus on through this conversation. So if this is our data, which I fabricated the data, and what I would really like is for someone to send me their own data, and then we can use the economic models and the way we format this for your own specific data, and you can see how the numbers shake out according to certain goals you may or may not have. Or even if you said, this is what I want to do for the remainder of the year, we can take your numbers and then we can go in and say, hey, according to your model, this is what your model says it's going to take for you to hit your goal. Okay, so in the chat boxes or in the Facebook Lives, if anybody would like to send me their year-to-date dials, contacts, appointments set, appointments held, agreements gained, contracts written, and contracts closed, we can use that data through this experiment, if you will, and we can tell you specifically what your conversion rates would tell us you would need to do to hit your goal, okay? Now back to conversion rates. So this model says that your conversion rate from contracts closed to contracts written is 100%. Contracts written to agreements gained, or excuse me, agreements gained to contracts written is 50%. And it kind of goes up as we go, right? Now these conversion rates, you know, it's a lot of people are going to ask, so what should they be? And I think that's a good question. I would say the first thing we need to do is we need to establish where you are now. So tracking is the conversation we're going to come back to a lot. If we're not tracking this data, the economic model will be incomplete and you won't be able to plan accordingly. So a lot of different ways to track. We use CTE, which is, we outsource it basically. The agents are responsible to complete a survey to get all of their data into CTE. And then I collect the data, mine it, and put it into a format where I understand it so I can coach them. I would say any system you use to track this data would be beneficial. And again, the more accurate the data, the more accurate the plan. So don't fabricate the data, don't bolster it, just make sure it's accurate, and then you can build a really clear plan.
Phil,
Now,
I have a quick question for you.
Okay.
What if we're right, either new into the business or maybe, right? I remember having that conversation early on with you and it was like, numbers, what do you mean numbers? You're supposed to write this down. You're supposed to pay attention to this. So what happens if we are that person who maybe has not up until this point tracked any of our numbers? You know, how do we start doing that maybe in a very simple way or maybe hit kind of the importance of why? Like how can they move forward today if they haven't been tracking their numbers?
So that is a great question. And without having a lot of time to think about it, I'll tell you what we do within our organization. So when we have a new agent come into our organization, we know our company-wide overall average conversion rates. And that is what we use to build a plan for our new agents. Essentially what that is saying is if you were to convert at these levels, which our company on average converts at, this is what it would take to hit your goal. Now, it'll take us 90 days to build accurate conversion rates, to build their own plan, right? Some of the conversion rates will still have to be fabricated in order to make sense. For instance, if you haven't closed a transaction yet, the economic model itself won't necessarily work because we don't have a baseline number to start with. Now, since you're not in our company or if you're not on a team, what I would do is I would, especially within your market, because I think geography is important, within your market, I would find somebody who is producing at the level that you would like to produce at in the next 12 months. Now, that producer would have to track their data, right? And I think with that in mind, if they have a similar business that you would like to have, I would ask them, year to date, what do your conversion rates look like? And then once we have that data, we could say, okay, considering their business model is similar to mine, considering they're operating in the market that I'm operating in, I can assume this is what it's going to look like. And then we begin there. Now, as they convert, they'll either work to exist within that model, or they will convert at a higher level to change the model. And essentially, that's always what we're trying to do. The higher your conversion rates, the less work it takes to achieve your plan. Now, I think that's important to know as we go forward through this conversation. It is our job to make our agents' goals not only as achievable as possible, but as easy as possible. We're not trying to make them hitting their goals any harder than we have to. Now, when we're talking about, working smart or working hard, working smart in the economic model is traditionally built around scripts and dialogues, converting at a higher level in order to do less work to get more business. Make sense? So I think that was probably a long answer to a short question, but I would go parallel somebody's business within my market that is looking to do something similar that I'm looking to do in the next 12 months.
I think that's a great answer. And then as far as tracking, I know we mentioned CTE. That's something our company does. It's a tracking. And yet, prior to that, right, we were just using Excel spreadsheets. It doesn't have to be difficult in an effort to track your numbers, right? Find the ones that, and I know you're going over, right, contacts, dials, contacts, all that. What are the important numbers to track? But I think that absolutely answered the question. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and I would say when we're talking about tracking, you can be as granular as you would like to be through this model. Now, the basic model that we just looked at briefly, we're not splitting up business between buyers and sellers. Now, the coaching model that I use currently is a lot more granular. We're talking about how many listing-driven dials are you putting out there, right? How many listing-driven contacts are you making? And then, of course, on the opposite side, that's same with the buyers. And then we're looking to come to an average sales price per listing. And then we'll go through and say, when you hit your goal at your average price per listing, this will be your volume, this will be your GCI, and this is what it's going to take to get there. Are you cool with that? Right? So what I would say is, number one, start tracking. And then as you begin to track and understand the numbers, I would divide it between listing and buyers. Now, I know it can be tricky to track, and there's ways to kind of take the dials to contacts. I think that's really the only place where, that it's hard to split. We know a buyer's appointment and a listing appointment, either set, held, or gained, are easy to track. The dials and the contacts seem to be harder to track when you split them. And what I would do in those situations is, if there's trouble tracking them, I just split the dials and contacts according to how many units, either on listings or buyers, an agent is looking to accomplish. So if 100 units is your goal and you want to go 50 listings and 50 buyers, then I split, 50% of your dials are listing driven, 50% of your dials are buyer driven. Does that make sense? Just to begin the economic model. However, you don't have to be that granular. If you're just looking to hit 100, you can put it all together and say, this is what I need to do. And then you could split up where your focus is between listings and buyers. So those are things where there's flexibility within your organization and how you want to plan. And it's kind of like anything else. You can take this to the nth degree to be as specific as possible. And I would say all with the focus of how do I make sure my agents know what they need to be doing yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, like probably our favorite part of this model is the fact that it takes all the emotion out of your business, right?
There's no emotion.
There's no feelings in the economic model. And it's a model, not a menu, which you remind me of all the time.
I never say that.
And I think my awareness was not like I wasn't tracking my numbers, and then I did, and I was realizing why there were giant gaps in the business because I had no awareness of what I was even doing, and then we can really put it back on ourselves to be like, okay, if I want to accomplish this, there's a game plan that makes this very predictable. And now I'm not going off of the feelings of I feel like I'm working hard. I feel like I'm doing the right things. I know I'm doing the right things now. So if you're not tracking, track today. I think if anyone walks away with that, right, we want them to walk away with that.
Right. And I'm not trying to get too far off track. And I was a gymnast. I coached competitive women's gymnastics, right? And I don't anymore. My daughter is in gymnastics, which is really fun to kind of look back and go into. I look back at me being as a coach, and I wish I had this model because I can probably, go to my children or my athletes and say, right now you're hitting 33% of your routine attempts. Like I could use the economic model as a coach with the kids, right? So it's funny. And Bethany, I brought that up because it was really on me where I didn't understand that we could use the economic model for your role. And, I'm a little slow and, it is what it is.
We learned together. It was great. Right. And now we're having a whole different conversation.
Right. So, and I think, you can use this for a lot of different purposes, right? So anyway, that was a good question. I hope we answered it pretty effectively anyway. So let's go into the conversion rates and what they mean to me when it comes to coaching. And then we're going to go into let's go ahead and apply the economic model and the formats that I use, and I'll show you how it builds a plan for the agents in our company and how you can build a plan for the agents in your company or for yourself, okay? So if we look over here, we're gonna start with dials to contacts. I'll say this, our company-wide conversion rate is 27%. I'll just type that in there, okay? Now, a lot of things to consider just with dials and contacts, right? And I guess just to be clear, a 27% conversion rate on dials to contacts means for every 100 dials, you will speak to 27 people, good or bad, and I think maybe this is a good time to also say your numbers are the numbers. I can't remember which book it is, but just face the brutal facts. Your numbers are the numbers. Now, if we don't like them, the training opportunities is how we change them, right? So for right now, our company, every 100 dials we make, we speak to 27 people, okay? Now, things to consider are conversion per source. Now, I'm sorry, guys, the sun's coming into my office. If you're looking at me and not my screen, I apologize. It's not a spotlight. Conversion per source is interesting, and I think diversity is probably important through that, right? We know our conversion in contact or dials to contacts through our database is going to be much, much higher than if we were circle prospecting. And circle prospecting, dialing just listed or just solds, farming dials, I would consider circle prospecting. But we know that the circle prospecting is high volume, low results, and the database is low volume, high results. And there's a lot of different places in between where conversion per source would be important. FSBOs and expireds would be another place. Now, those are things that you can track through the lead gen model. And that's a whole different conversation. I'm not going to go down that road today. However, just things to consider, right? So what we're talking about here is efficiency from dials to contacts, right? I would traditionally characterize this on a per hour basis, how many dials per hour to how many contacts per hour. And if we're trying to get done what we need to get done in a budgeted amount of time, you can then say to your agent, are you calling the right people? If we're not getting the results out of the activities that we're looking for. And if not, what sources should we be calling? And then it is a conversation between activities and results. I don't want to say I don't care what you do to get the results. Nothing illegal, like I tell my team. If you knew my team, you'd understand. However, we're just trying to drive a result, and however we can get the results on behalf of our agent, we're cool with it, right? So efficiency is a training opportunity if we're not getting results from dials to contacts. If they're not dialing, whole nother conversation that we're also not going to get into. But a lack of activity would show up right in the beginning. And that's where we begin. You know, how do we overcome call reluctance? Are you not comfortable with the scripts that we use? How can we make them your own? How can you be comfortable calling a for sale by owner? You know, write me a script. You know, I don't have to give you everything. If you don't like what we have, send me something you like, and then build into being comfortable through activities through there. All right. The next conversion in the line is contacts to appointment set. Now, I'm going to go KW on you guys. 5%. Anybody know why it's 5%? Man, I wish there was somebody on here to talk to me. Nobody's on there? Darn it.
It's just quiet. I think they're just listening to you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll talk to you.
All right. So 5%, of course, and if anybody's ever taken bold, you know, the point of bold, 100 contacts per week to set 5 appointments is really the goal. That's a 5% conversion rate, right? 20 contacts a month, essentially. You can generate a really large business through that as long as you're converting on a high level through the bottom end of the economic model, right? So 5% is what it should be. We have agents who range anywhere from 3.5% all the way up to some pretty astronomical conversion rates, especially when you're new. You know, you don't have a ton of data. Your conversion rates can be pretty inflated. However, if you are at, you know, setting 5 appointments per 100 contacts, you're in line. If you can set 10 appointments per 100 contacts, you're at a 10% conversion rate, and that's really good. I know some of our ISAs have a pretty high conversion rate. Some of our rock star agents are at 12%. And that's how we make their plans smaller. They have to do less to get either the same or more as someone else who isn't as good at converting yet. Now, if we're lacking appointment set from the contacts that we're making, the training opportunity is scripts and dialogues. And I'd say that's probably the conversation through a lot of our conversion rates. However, if we're doing the activities, we're making the contacts, but we're not getting the appointment set that we need, we know that there is a scripting issue, plain as it is right now. You can beat around the bush as much as you want, but that's what it is. And so, you know, things that we can do, script practice. I know we script practice every day. You know, it's like warming up before the game, stretching out before a workout. We're not going in cold, right? So we all get together and we take a half an hour, we sit down like 15 minutes to a half an hour. Everybody practices traditionally the calls that they're going to be making that morning. And then we jump in and we get on the phones and we hammer it out. So I would say script practice or getting a coach who can help you, you know, make scripts your own, make them not sound robotic, make them sound like a conversation, help you internalize them so you can speak with them clearly and get over some of that call reluctance. Those are some training opportunities that I think would be beneficial if we're not getting the appointment set. Okay, sound good? Forgot I'm talking to myself. All right. Appointments set to appointments held. I'm going to be very honest. That's our company conversion rate right now. We're at a 48% appointment set to appointment held. Now, that essentially means half of the appointments that we set will hold. You set 2 appointments in our company, 1 will hold. And overall, there's some separation individually per agent or per, excuse me, per expansion office, but not much. I'd say the highest we have anybody converting from appointment set to appointments held is 60%. Now, I'm not asking you to use our current conversion rates as a benchmark. It's just a conversation piece, right? And I'd be interested, again, and that's kind of why I was looking for some data from other people's to see what your conversion rates look like. To be quite honest with you, the individual agents that I coach, their conversion rates are much, much higher than our company-wide conversion rates. At the same time, their businesses are dramatically different. And
Would that come into play? And I know, obviously, again, we're talking team versus individual. Coming back to lead source, right? We know if we started to pull apart the lead source, if it was coming from their database, they're more likely to hold than maybe an internet lead or a FSBO. Or is that the piece that's affecting the conversion rate, or can it affect the conversion rate? Is probably the question.
Absolutely. And all of the conversion rates, I think, so let's take the individual agents I coach. One of them has been in the business, I think, 30 years. And, you know, but just didn't have the organization and the understanding, and she's looking to grow her team. So she wanted clarity around her numbers. Her conversion rates are astronomical. You know, when you have a 95% conversion rate from contracts written to contracts closed, you don't have to sell as many houses to hit your goal. Now, I would also say over time, that's a conversion rate that you're looking to hit. But I would also say the reason that conversion rate is so high because she is extremely experienced, and the majority of her business comes from her database. Make sense? And again, kind of going back to it all, the numbers are the numbers. Your numbers are your numbers. And I think what the question that we will start asking through this is, considering what my numbers are, do I like the amount of work that I have to do to hit my goal? And if not, then where are the opportunities for me to convert better? Make sense?
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So appointments set to appointments held. I would say that's also a scripting and dialoguing issue, but more of the transition from, you know, what kind of value am I providing to the person I'm either across the table with or on the phone with? And then making sure that they stick to the appointment. Now, if we have appointments that are set really far out, conversion rate for those are lower. Someone who wants to meet me today, those are higher. I would also say it's how you present yourself on the phone, which is going to help you keep your set to held conversion rate high. Sound good?
Quick question on that. As far as setting appointments out, and we've had this conversation, is there a recommendation on how far you should set an appointment out and actually track it? Like if I set an appointment with you today, but I don't want to meet for a month, are you tracking that number?
No.
Okay. So what's the time limit recommendation on that?
So if we take that, you know, someone like that is of course going to go in our database. We would reach out to them weekly just to check in, make sure, hey, everything's still going well, especially now with COVID. You know, we've got a lot of people who are trying to move out of town into Nashville, and travel plans are changing daily, right? So we keep up with them weekly just to make sure they're coming in town. And then 7 days prior, that last check-in, that's when we count it as appointment set. Now, we don't count it as another contact, but we just wait till about 7 days out. Anything further than 7 days out, I wouldn't count until we get to that 7 day out period. And, you know, again, you guys, everybody can handle it their own way within their organization. But I would say if they say, yeah, I'll meet you in 2 months, I wouldn't track it yet. I don't want it to skew your numbers. Now they say yes 7 days out, we're good to go. Just from my perspective and making the numbers work. Sound good?
Love it. That was the answer I was looking for.
All right. So moving down the conversion rate ladder, appointments held to agreements gained. Now, presentation, right? What is your listing presentation? You know, what's not working? Buyer's presentation, what's not working? If we're meeting with these people and we're not getting the agreement gained, it's a skills and, you know, it's a scripts and dialogue issue. I'm sorry. But it's within your presentation. Now your presentation is a script and it's a dialogue. And really, I feel like I put presentation there, but it really your presentation should be a conversation. And the difference between the two is the line of questions you ask to engage the people across the table from you. So our agents are required to have 3 questions per, we have a PowerPoint on the presentation, of course. I didn't develop it because I'm not good with the PowerPoint thing, but they're required to develop 3 questions per slide that are not yes or no questions. Like the people across the table from you cannot answer them yes or no, to ensure that we're engaging them in the right way. And we are very clear on what value we need to provide them while we're at the table with them, right? Now, if you've got someone who's sitting across the table from you who won't shut up, you don't need 3 questions, right? It's more of, I have them in my pocket. If I need them, I can use them. If I don't, if they're just giving me everything I need, we're good. But if not, I need to know what's most important to these people across the table from me, so I know which value I can provide. So if we're not getting agreements gained from the appointments held, the presentation, the scripting and dialoguing through that is our opportunity. Sound good? All right, so agreements gained and contracts written. This one's a little bit more ambiguous. I'm sorry, excuse me. And I'd say it's market specific. If we're getting a lot of agreements gained and we're not getting contracts written at a certain pace, certain things to look into, right? Like when we're out, let's say we're with a buyer, are we giving them the proper perspective within the market? You know, I get this isn't the perfect home, but from your perspective, because you're the expert, you may know this is the best home that they're going to get for the money they can spend where they want to be, right? And how are we giving them that perspective within the market? And how are we taking them through that process of understanding, hey, I know this doesn't have everything that you want. However, homes are getting more expensive. The longer we wait, the less home you're going to get and the more you're going to spend to get it. And that doesn't mean buy this home. I just want to give you the perspective as we move forward, right? So that's an opportunity. What are we doing on site as we're showing homes? If it's a listing, is marketing an issue? If we're not, we're getting a lot of listings, agreements gained, we're getting them on the market, we're not getting them closed. Is pricing them a problem? And those are the questions that I would ask myself within your organization. If we don't like the conversion rate from agreements gained to contracts written, I'm sure there are probably 1,000 different things to consider there. I'd say those are a couple. I wouldn't say most important, least important. Just something to consider. Okay. And then of course, contracts written to contracts closed. And this comes, through the process, creative negotiations, and again, perspective within the market. When an inspection on a buyer comes back and it's not the most clean home, how do we make sure they understand, hey, number one, we can take care of some of this. And if we did, would that make you comfortable? And then, again, perspective within the market. All right, if this is not the right home, let's take a look at what's out there before we do anything else. We've got time within our contract. Is there anything else that's out there that is better right now that you'd like to buy? If there is, then we know this isn't the right home. And if there's not, it's just something to consider, right? So having those conversations, being creative through negotiations to keep contracts written and contracts closed where you want it. I'm sorry, guys. Let me put these numbers in for us too. Appointments held to agreements gained. I hate to generalize on this one because our listing conversion rate from appointments held to agreements gained is different than our buyers within our company. I'd say your company as well. But overall, we're at a 68% conversion rate currently. Agreements gained to contracts written, we are at a 75%. And then contracts written to contracts closed, we are at 85%. So that's our company-wide economic model. And we only use this when we are looking at our company from a 30,000 foot perspective. And we're almost on the moon when we look at these numbers because they're so broad, right? We like to be a little bit more specific. So Bethany, does anybody else have any questions before I move into, kind of fabricating? All right, well, let's take some data and let's do something with it.
No, I think this is good. I just want to remind everyone too, and you can speak to this, of obviously, again, teams versus individual. When we're dealing with big masses of groups of agents who are putting up a lot of numbers, those conversion rates can be different too, because we're having to average them all together. And businesses may look slightly different than that if they're dealing a little bit on a smaller scale in their individual businesses.
Yes. And, we start with these numbers and then I will go to, we have 7 different expansion offices and I can go to David Huffaker and say, David, Mount Juliet, company-wide, in order to hit their goal, needs to do X, Y, and Z, right? And then I can go to David and say, Dana Hutton, who's a 360 agent within our Mount Juliet office, this is precisely what she needs to do to hit her goal within the expansion office's goal, within the company-wide goal, right? So, and that's clarity for me. As a coach, that's the language I speak, and I'm pretty short-minded, or I do have blinders on when it comes to that. But I also think I'm just not smart enough to withhold anything else within my brain. So I stick with the numbers.
We think you're super smart, but it is true. I mean, I feel like we're just constantly talking economic model on top of another economic model that all works together.
It does.
So we have that emotional feel. We can make a very predictable business, and they can do that too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to be real, right? A lot of the conversations that we have through the economic model become emotional, not like in a bad way, more of like, hey, so we did a 6-month plan. How are you going to hit your goal 30 days ago, right? And we built a plan like, here, this is your year-to-date conversion rate. This is what you have left to do, listings and buyers. And in order to hit your goal by the end of November, this is what your plan says you need to do. Is it worth it for you to do it? Do you understand what you're going to get when you do it? Are you comfortable with how much volume you're going to close? Are you comfortable with your GCI? And then if so, what is it going to take? What are you willing to put in order to crush the goal? So it becomes emotional. I know we say there's no emotion. However, it's got nothing to do with us. It's got everything to do with them. And that's the focus that we have. That's the focus that I have when I coach. So as much as we say it's not emotional, that's why no one gets to listen to my coaching calls. You'd be shocked at the emotions that go on in that call. But
yeah, we give you a hard time about being very emotionless, but the fact is you probably hear the most emotion on the team because it's all feeding back into that big why, that time versus money versus what does this do for me and my family, right? And then your job as a coach is giving them a plan, which is the economic model to achieve those goals that are super important to them. And that's the emotion piece for sure.
Yeah, and I'm tired just thinking about all the emotions. Okay. Let's move away from this, right? Let's build a model. Since we don't have anybody who's giving us data, this model I would say is not very accurate. Let's just throw some numbers in here, okay? We can use round numbers to make it make sense. So let's say someone so far this year has made 5,000 dials. Let's say they have made, what should they have made? Year to date, 6 months for 2,400 contacts. Well, let's break that down a little bit. Let's say they made 1,250. Sorry. So there's a 25% conversion rate from dials to contacts. You know, is what it is. From those 1,250 contacts, this agent, we'll call them Agent Z. No one's laughing. I hope someone's laughing out there. Okay. Let's say that so far year to date, you've set, and again, I'm trying to think of a reasonable amount of an appointment. If we set, let's say we did set 20 a month. Let's say we set 120. Okay, so now we know that your contact to appointment set conversion rate is 9.6%. Out of those 120 appointments, let's go ahead and use 50%. 60 have held. Let's say we've gained, I don't know, let's say 45 agreements. What do you know? And let's say we've written 36. These numbers are just happening. I don't know how it's happening. And we've closed 30. There's an economic model, right? Now, applying it is what I want to make sure we're all clear on what we can do. Now, what I have done, and this may be a whole nother class if you would like to back end into this, essentially what I'm doing in the basic economic model, and we're going to get into a more thorough economic model shortly, and I hope that's maybe a little bit more valuable. You know, we can just put a goal in here of, all right, I want to hit how many units? And I wish somebody shout out some units to me, Bethany. How many units? You're muted.
All right, for the year. Is that what you want?
Like the rest of the year, and it doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's do 24.
All right, 24 units, and I'd say great. Then, that's too many decimals. I love numbers, but that's out of control. So if I put that number here, it builds the economic model for me. Right now, what I had to do was build a formula and basically take this number 24, and if you can see up here, I divide these two. Come on, there we go. So I take 24 and divide it by 83%, which is 0.83, to know if I want to close 24 units, I have to write 29 because 83% will close. Does that make sense? I'm asking you, Bethany. I hope someone else.
I love that.
All right. And then in order to move this up the line, we take 29, which is the next number, and define that one, and we divide it by 80%. And then we go, and we're just going up the line. Now, total goal. So if, let's say 24 monthly goal right now, I have it at a whole year. We can change that to 6 months. Well, let's do it to 5 because we really only have 5 months, right? So we then take that, and I know you can drag these formulas so they work. This is now what I know you have to do every month and every week in order to close 24 more units in 6 months. Does that make sense?
I love that. And I don't know, I'm probably going to ask something here that I don't even know if you have this prepared. Is something that we could share, like a sample sheet with them? Like, because if you're like me, right, Excel is not my friend. I'm not really proficient at it. I've just been lucky enough to work with Phil, and I give him all my ideas, and he makes them into perfect number formulas. But is that something where we could share like a sheet like this, and they could copy it into their own drive and make their own numbers work?
This is what I would say. If someone is interested in using something along these lines, just reach out to either myself or Bethany. I would like to have a conversation with you about the sheet itself, but I'm more than willing to share whatever I have if it benefits you, the company or your agents or you or whatever. Yeah. So we can do that. You know, and I think what I'm really trying to say is there's probably better ways to do this, and I just don't know. I don't know how. So I would say someone can take this and do something much more, efficient, effective. But again, I have to create this. I have to use it, and I have to know how to read it to help my agents, right? So if we took this, we know, and just kind of working through the numbers, I have to write 29 contracts to close 24. I got to gain 36 agreements to write 29. I got to hold 48 appointments to gain 36. I got to set 96 appointments. I got to make 1,000 contacts to do it all according to these conversion rates. All right. Every month, 200 contacts. Every week, 50 contacts. I have to set 5 appointments is what I would tell my agents. Always round up. Rule of thumb, 2.4, yeah, it's right on the line. So set 5, I'd say hold 3, gain 2, write 1.5, and close 1 unit a week to hit that goal. Now, how do you use this in coaching? When you meet with an agent, or if you are holding yourself accountable, or you have a coach holding you accountable, did you write a contract this week? Did you gain 1.5 agreements? What did we not do in order to hit that goal? Or future pace me. Do we have them in our pipeline? And by next week, we'll double up these numbers and we're good. Those are the coaching conversations that I have when I see what they're supposed to do according to what they did. Okay. So this is the generic version of it all. Any questions online, Bethany?
No, but I just reached out about Facebook to just check to make sure we're not missing anything there, and added our contact info. So hopefully those participants will have that, or if they're watching it back later, we'll be able to maybe reach out to you directly if they have something about this specifically. Okay.
All right. So let's get wild. Let's go ahead and move this down the line. Now I'm going to pull this up and we're going to talk about it before we do anything. Okay. This is what my economic model for all of my agents has turned into. Okay. I'm going to go through it, but now the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because what I would say is right now everybody should be planning or begin the planning stages. I know it's not even August yet, but we need to start getting our minds wrapped around what is 2021 going to look like for me as an individual agent, for my team as a rainmaker, or as a coach. Like if you're coaching agents, if you're a team leader, or you're a PC coach, how can I build my trajectory to hit 2021 starting January 1st? And just so we're all clear, whoever's listening, 2021 starts December 1st, right? Any business that we do in December pushes to January, characteristically because of the holidays. You got Thanksgiving right before Christmas, and then in December you got Christmas. So anything we pen in December is going to move into January. So by December 1st, our trajectory for 2021 activities and results needs to be in place to hit the goal. If we're waiting till January 1st to start working on trajectory, you're probably a quarter behind where you need to be. Now, that's what this is for. This is for planning, coaching, training, accountability, right? So I'm going to start at the bottom. Does that have agreement with everybody? So the exact same economic model that Bethany and I just went through is down here at the bottom. And this is kind of where we begin. This is where I mine the data and I put it in, and then it works its way into everything else, right? So let's take that same data. Let's go back to the basic model and we'll split it all down the middle. Does that sound good? So we made 2,500 dials on the buy side and the list side. And what's 1,250 divided by 2, Bethany?
Don't put me on the spot. I'm not that quick. I live with a calculator.
I got it. All right. So we're going to split this business 50-50. We're going to say, if 24 units was the goal from the previous model, we're going to, in the next 5 months, we're going to close 12 listings and 12 buyers. Okay. So we're going to split all the data. 120 appointments set. That means we've set 60 on the list, 60 on the buy. 45, that's a tough one by 2. Does anybody know that one?
22 and a half.
Thank you.
Look at that. I'm on it.
So we hope you set more listing appointments than buyers because we know listings drive the market. So we'll do that. And then 36, that's easy. What was the next number in the, oh, wait, I'm sorry. No, we're good. And then 30. Did I skip a number?
I don't think so.
Are you sure? I'm pretty sure I did. Bear with me, people. So sorry. Oh, I did. Appointments held. Thanks, Bethany.
So sorry.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, trying. This is what happens when I try to go fast. Nothing good happens. All right, and then we said 24, so 12. 12. All right, so those are our conversion rates. And again, if you'd like to have a conversation around this form, I would love to do that, and how I built it and how I use it. I think that's probably a whole nother conversation as well. Now, since I have this, we've already written 12 listing contracts. Yes. Let's say our goal was 24 total. This is telling me that I have 12 remaining. That comes down here and it builds me my plan. Okay. Now, currently, we only have 2 quarters left. We really have a quarter and a half. This is actually the halfway point of Q3. Crazy, right? So by the end of August, Q4 is here. 45 days, Q4. Everybody hear that? 45 days, Q4 is here. Okay, just want to make sure everybody's with me. So we have 2 quarters left. What, Bethany? What? It's true.
I know it is. It's shocking though. I think I've had that conversation with 4 people this week. It's just the reminder of how fast 2020 is going, or feels like it's going. Yeah. Despite all the stuff, it's just a good reminder to get this stuff together. That we're practically, already in that planning season for 2021.
Yeah. So those of you wishing 2020 away, it's working. It's going really fast. But don't wish it away. It's it's 365 days. Don't waste them. Right. All right. So I've taken the total data for us to hit 12 more units and divided it by 2 quarters remaining. So quarterly, I know what my agent needs to do to hit their goal. I take the quarterly data, the total data, and divide it by 5 because there was 5 months left. So I know what my agents need to do. And this is listing specific. And this is where, again, it gets more granular, right? And then every week, this agent needs to make 125 listing driven dials. So for sale by owners, expireds, circle prospecting, farm, database, I'm sure I'm missing some. Those are listing driven activities in our world, right? You have to make 31 contacts. You have to set 3 appointments, hold 1.5, gain 1 agreement, write 1 contract, and close half a contract essentially every week to hit your goal. Okay. Does that make sense? Everybody do this. All right, perfect. And let's say the same for our buyers. So we wanted a 48 unit year back when we planned around this time in 2019. And this is where we are. We're halfway there. We're a little over halfway through the year. So we've got some catching up to do. Regardless, I put 24 in there. This tells it that there's 12 remaining, and then it builds the formulas exactly the same way all the way through the plan. Now, most likely, guys, well, not most likely, your conversion rates on the list and buy side will not be the same. This is just, we're just building it out of thin air. If you would like to see, a certain agent in our organization's version of this, so you can see what they're actually doing, I'd be more than happy to go over that with you outside of this call as well. So if you would like to see, hey, what does a buyer's agent's economic model look like on your team? What does a expansion agent's model look like within your team? Whatever you guys would like to see, I can show you what the real numbers would look like because they may make more sense. Anyway, so we split this up. We know we got 24 units left, and now we know what we need to do. The next piece that I think would be important for us is understanding what's our average price per unit. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of different conversations to have. Are you focused on a unit goal specifically, or are you focused on that unit goal because you're trying to hit a certain volume and that'll give you a certain GCI? It's not for you to make that decision unless you're asking yourself that question. Those are the questions we ask our agents, right? So if it is a volume goal, we can build a plan on hit a volume instead of hit a unit number. Either way, we're going to use the economic model, right? So listing volume to date. I don't know, let's say, what, 10 million? All right, and that's 1 million. That's not enough. That's not going to get us where we want to go. How many zeros do I need? There we go. And let's just go ahead and stick with having everything right now. That should be enough. Boom. So our listing volume to date is 10 million. Our buyer volume, excuse me, is 10 million. And collectively, so far year to date, we have pended 20 million in real estate, right? And according to the model down here, we did it in 12 units each. And as you can see, just tells us what our average sales price per listing is, per buyer, and company-wide. And again, these numbers are not going to be the same when you take your data and build something like this. However, just for kind of looking at it and making sure we understand what this all does for your company, right? Now, this right here is your listing volume at goal. So what this is telling me, if we took your average price per listing, multiplied it by your listing goal, this is your listing volume for the year. So when you hit the goal, 20 million, according to your average sales price per listing, is what you're going to close. Same with the buyers. If I close 24 buyers at $833,333.33, that's what I'm going to close. Collectively, my company, when I hit my goal, is going to close 40 million. And then you come over here to GCI and say, is this what you had in mind? Is making $600,000 from listings in GCI, is making $600,000 from buyer GCI worth what you have to do to get it? Does that make sense? And if you guys hear my children, they just got home, I'm so sorry. It may sound like a caged animal is trying to get in my office, but it's just my 2-year-old. It's all good. All right, now, these are also numbers that we haven't talked about that I believe you should track. Now, these are much easier to go back and identify. Our average price per unit, extremely easy to figure out, right? It's just take your total volume on the list side, which I believe even your team leaders or your MCAs, or if you don't have it right in your hand, they can give it to you pretty easily. Divide it by how many listing transactions you did, and there you have your average price per unit on the list side, right? Same for the buyers. And then we can say, when I do X amount more, this is what I'm gonna get total. Is the juice worth the squeeze? I've had one of my agents say, no, that's not enough. Great. What should it be, right? Tell me what number that needs to look like, and then the plan will tell you what you need to get there, and then you tell me if you're willing to do it. Does that make sense? Again, I know I'm talking to myself, but that's okay. All right, any questions online, Bethany?
Nope, you are good right now.
Okay, so, and back to application, right? And this is all application. I wanna make sure that not only do you understand the economic model, what the conversion rates should be telling you, and when they do tell you something, what do we need to do to fix it? But then what does it look like when you put it all together, right? So this is more visual, you know. I think the box, well, it's still boxes and numbers, but it's more visual, you know, just kind of as a breakdown. Now, all the data at the bottom of the form just populates into these boxes. I don't have to do anything to do it. As you can see, collectively to hit the goal for the remainder of the 5 months of the year, 60 listing appointments set, 60 buyer appointments set, and 120 total. So this is company-wide listings, company-wide buyers, and then the bottom section is always totals. We do break it down by quarter, which we use 2 months because there's only 2 months left. And then this is really where I coach in its current month. So halfway through the month, have you set 6 listing appointments yet? Have you held 3? Have you gained 2? Have you written 2? Have you closed 1 and a quarter? If someone figures that out, be interested to see that. See, like, look at that right there. That drives me crazy. Does that drive you guys crazy? Okay, anyway, that's better. So now I guess let's put data in. And right now, you know, we're working our way into the quarter. So let's say you go to CTE where your agents put data in, and then you put it in this form so they can see where they stand. You know, and I do this for my agents. Like, all I do is I ask them to put the information in the survey. I data mine it and I put it in here so I can see it prior to coaching. I'm trying not to bog them down with anything that's not important to them. So I don't need them to report it into CTE and then come back here and throw it in here. I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible for them because I know they're super busy, and we're agents. You know, we're like kittens on catnip. You know, there's no way we're going to be able to do this. So one thing, put it in CTE, make sure it's right. I'll do the rest. I'll interpret it and we'll look at it together, right? So let's say we've set 15 listing appointments. We have held 7. We've gained 4. Hang on. Sorry, guys. I screwed up that box. 7, 4. Say we've written 3, closed 2. And let's say our volume is 750. There we go. Now, just so you guys kind of see what these boxes mean, right? The CONV is conversion, and that's what's here. So right now, set to held is 46%, held to gain is 57, gain to written is 75, and written to close is 66. So just a place where everything's in one place. Now, these percentages here at the bottom are the percentage toward their goal that they've completed, not conversion rates, just per se, you know, obviously 15 of 60 is 25%. So we're 25% of our way to our goal, 23% of the way to the listing held goal for the year, 18% agreements gained, 17% contracts written, 70% contracts closed, right? We take these same numbers and just move them into what we've done quarterly, and it tells you 50% through your quarterly goal, close to fit, and just kind of down the line, right? And then monthly, I think more importantly is, well, let's break this down. Let's say we've set 8 so far, 3, 2, 1, 1. And then down here, we know that you're 67% appointment set, 50% held, 45 gained, 27 written, and 41% contracts closed. Make sense? Now, when you add in the buyer data, it will also populate down here. Okay? It'll give you percentages and conversion rates. So this is, I think this is the application portion of it where I think this is what I wanted you guys to see. And now I did create this all on my own, right? Like it's changes. This is something that I've started using within the last 30 days. And it gives me clarity to coach my agents. Bottom line, I hope it's helpful to understand why the tracking is important, why to look at conversion rates. And I think the most important piece of it is you're responsible to build your plan, right? You're responsible to help your agents build their plan. If somebody came into your world and said, I want to make $100,000 in my first 12 months, great. I would take my company's average sales price, my company's average conversion rates, and say, this is what it's going to look like within my organization for you to hit $100,000. Does it make sense? Excuse me. So that is all that I have, Bethany, when it comes to the economic model. Now, I would say individually, if anybody would like to have a conversation outside of this to discuss, how can I either build something like this, or how do I start, specifically, or, can I take this and use it? I just want to make sure you understand formulas and all that. I don't want you to screw something up and not be able to use it. Sound good?
Yeah, and just on that note, right? I know a lot of you guys have had, and they're going to put in the Facebook comments my contact info, and I'm happy to patch you kind of through to Phil. I know numbers is not my first language. Phil, you speak in numbers, right? And that's makes sense to you, and your brain works like that. It is totally normal that not all of our brains activate like that. And so I do think there is, in having conversation, we're happy to help you and partner with you to figure it out and kind of chunk it down of what makes sense for your business, whether you're going to start tracking your numbers today, or if you've been tracking your numbers for 3 years, what that means for you and how you can continue to build so you have a really accurate picture of what's going on in your business. Because we know when